Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3 Irony and today we are talking about trade in Path of Exile. There seems to have been an uprising and upheaval of discussion around the topic of trade over the last 48 to 72 hours over the weekend of Path of Exile and into the beginning of this week. And I wanted to highlight that today for a discussion time for us to be able to chat about some of the problems that are going on with trade, some of the opinions that are going on right now with trade, and of course, as always, I invite you to join into the discussion. You can drop us a comment down below to let us know what your questions, quandaries, problems, feedback, ideas for trade are at this point in time. Of course, I will shamelessly plug that we do have a video on the auction house. It's just titled Auction House and POE, The Great Debate. It's a 51-minute video, so those of you that would like to have a longer discussion about auction house, I'm probably going to reference this if any of you drop a comment about how POE needs an auction house. I will probably link you directly to this video. This link for this particular video, as along with all of our other discussion sites and sources, will of course be placed directly below in the video description for you to click on and select for your further reading pleasure. If at any point in time throughout the video you would like to jump ahead or revisit any of our topics, there are timestamps placed above my completely bald forehead right above there, and they are hot linked down below in the video description for you. So a couple of different links and really discussion aggregates for us today as we talk about trade. So the first one is an actual unpopular opinion. This is by Arum2K. He says, trade is broken, but the people complaining the loudest are the ones who interact with it in the worst way. So first off, this is kind of the anti-meta discussion to start off, to kickstart our discussion. So lots of people are complaining about trade. This is nothing new in Path of Exile's history. Many people throughout the course of history of Path of Exile have complained about trade in one iteration or another. Its functionality, its design, its philosophy on GGG's end, its practicality, its implementation in game. Lots of different discussion points in trade. And right here, Oram lays out what is right now presently an unpopular opinion, but it's been popular, and that's a whole circle jerk discussion in and of itself. But I do think he brings up some good points here. So we're going to start off our discussion with this. The Trade API is not able to keep up with the massive load, which causes indexing sites to keep items listed up for several hours after they are sold. This is not news to anyone who has played the last few leagues. Obviously, this is bad. Obviously, this needs to be fixed ASAP. Until this is fixed, you should take some precautions for your own sanity. I see a lot of comments like, quote, I have been trying to buy X item for 10 minutes and nobody is responding. Or, quote, 95% of people I whisper this league are not responding. Honestly, if this is your experience and you haven't adapted the way you trade, you are self-flogging at this point. You can cut down on frustration and annoying downtime with one simple trick. Stop spending 10 minutes to save a couple of chaos. Your time is valuable, especially in this league where even running white maps with bad gear is around 100 C plus per hour. If you're buying a unique maps, fossils, currency, or anything else that has high trade volume, then assume none of the cheap ones are worth whispering. If one of these items gets listed at or below market value, they get picked up instantly by someone or something, beep boop, insinuating a bot, who is faster than you. The seller then gets bombarded by whispers for up to hours while the slow API struggles to clear it. The first page is essentially a history of all the underpriced items listed and immediately sold for the last several hours. I've made the mistake of listing a tabula at 9C, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that I got hundreds of whispers before I enabled D&D. If I had to type sold to everyone, I would not be able to actually play the game. If you need one, put your minimum bid higher. I just tested this and got a tabula for 13C from the first whisper. Okay, so a couple of thoughts here. So first off, this is very pragmatic, right? Those of you who are having trouble actually making sales, maybe expand your search, right? That's Arum's 2K's basic tip, right? Hey, actually expand your search, right? Don't simply look at something and say, oh, this is priced at, let's say, 20C, and there's another similar priced item at 22C. Don't look to save that 2C, simply spend more. Now, on the one hand, that's easy to say, right? If you've got the extra 2C to spend. right? And to Orum's point, he's saying, look, we can all make the chaos throughout this league because currency is just everywhere in this league. You can simply go map for a few minutes and you're going to make that extra currency. So just spend a couple extra chaos as you are actually making trades, and your trades will actually go much smoother, much faster. I will simply add to this and second this. I get that there's going to be a segment of the population that's going to say, I can't actually spend that extra C on every single trade because 2C here, 2C there, 2C here. Pretty soon it's 6C. Pretty soon you do that times 10. That's 60C. Not everybody's got that extra amount of chaos floating around to make all of these different trades that are going on. So I get that. I'm sympathetic to that. There are definitely some problems that are going on with the API and with trade that definitely need to be addressed. But the point here from this, the takeaway from this particular discussion point is indeed expand your search, expand your horizons. And on top of that, I would say expand the way in which you view your time trading while you're playing Path of Exile. If you are sitting down, for those of us who are more casual players who don't play, 8 to 12 hours a day while streaming because we don't play Path of Exile as our full-time job, if that's where you're at, right? If you're more of a casual player where maybe you only get to play on the weekends or maybe you only get to play a few hours during the day, during the week, if that's where you're at, then you really need to evaluate the time that you are playing and the session, the goals that you have for the session while you're sitting down to play Path of Exile. If your goals during that particular sit-through and play-through session are to upgrade your character by purchasing new items, in other words, you've already farmed and you've already acquired the currency that you need to purchase those items, then spend a couple of minutes to actually find your breakpoints. Hey, what is the amount of currency that I will spend? What's the most amount of currency that I will spend for this particular item slot, for this particular map that I'm looking to buy to complete my atlas, or for this particular piece of jewelry, or for this particular upgrade that I am looking for in general? What is the maximum amount of currency that I'm going to look for in order to purchase? A lot of the time, most of us as consumers are looking for the minimum amount of currency that we're willing to spend on something. But in a market that is being messed with to the degree that the POE market is being messed with right now, really evaluating what it is that the maximum amount that you're willing to spend and then going down from there is not that bad of a practice. I know several different people that what they're doing is they're actually going to that maximum break point and they're messaging people and then messaging backwards from there to see who's the lowest bid, as opposed to looking at the lowest bid and going up. People are going to the highest bid and then going down. That's just one way to look at it, because realistically, you're going to be spending an enormous amount of time, a frustrating amount of time trading, if at the moment you are messaging people who have got the cheapest of something, because the cheapest of something is probably an old listing, as this particular user has pointed out, and it's probably already been bought. For those of us who are even doing currency flipping and who are trading divination cards and items and are making flips that way, it's very, very frustrating because realistically, probably the first page to page and a half of people are probably either old listings or price fixers. And at this point, I don't think that we can simply say, oh, well, this is just a price fixing problem, because a lot of people aren't necessarily price fixing. Their prices are still being indexed at an old price. So I'll give you an example of this really quickly for me personally. On last Thursday, I actually was getting pings for items that had sold on Tuesday, almost more than 48 hours, so just under 48 hours from when they were listed. I was still getting pings for that. I was still getting pings on Saturday then for currencies that I had listed at prices on Thursday, and I had played on Friday, so it's not as though I just didn't refresh my stash tabs or the API didn't pick up on that. It was really, really frustrating. So it's frustrating for all of us at this point in time. That being said, it's time for us as good players, as good Path of Exile players, to adapt, right? We adapt to whatever the circumstances are, to whatever the league mechanic is, to whatever the changes in gameplay is, to whatever the meta is. We adapt, right? So it's time for us to adapt when it comes to trade to make it less frustrating. And one way to do that is, rather than setting your minimum and messaging up, is actually to set your maximum price and then message down. Okay. Another user has actually come up with this beautiful screenshot. This will, again, be linked down below in the video description of, hey, how to actually do a currency flip and how to actually trade during Path of Exile. And the most helpful part of this that I found was just to look at these particular trades and to say, hey, these are all definitely sold. This kind of sliding scale of what's going on here. So these are that are all in this red line are probably definitely sold, right? The first page, as it were, is probably definitely sold, or they're price fixing. Either way, it's a waste of your time to message them. So what you want to do is you actually want to scroll down into the maybe I can try section, this yellow section, where maybe they're price fixers, maybe they're sold, but maybe they're actually people who are actually selling. So if you message these people who are in the red zone, don't expect an answer. This is the 10 minutes of time where you're just spamming, the first 10 to 25 different people on any given particular search. What this suggestion is to just let yourself know, hey, this is the trend of what's going on with trade. Don't waste your time messaging these first 10 people on the trade website. Just don't do it. It's a waste of your time. So rather than messaging these 10 people, assume that those people are already sold and just message these people who are in the yellow section. And then maybe there's some people here in the green section that are, sorry, I was AFK. Do you still want it? Those are probably people who maybe the price looks a little bit too high or maybe a little bit too different for you to normally message, but try messaging them because they might actually be there. They might actually not be AFK. They might actually be in a map. They may be coming back from a bathroom break or from a snack break. They may just be at their computer but have a ratio that's set higher because they've also observed this market trend and they don't want to be caught up and not get messaged because they're in the, hey, don't even bother. They're probably price fixing or probably an old listing. Then you've got the way too overpriced section of the market. You don't want to scroll down here and get to this. This is where you're talking about, oh, hey, I'll buy your mirror of Calandra for 1 chaos, right? Like just exorbitantly overpriced where the ratios are way too bad, where somebody's just looking to essentially make a big profit off of somebody else's mistake, right? But this is a very, very accurate breakdown. I wanted to show this because this is very much an accurate breakdown of observing what's going on in the market and then changing your trading habits because of that. Okay. Another discussion that has come up involving trade is this boycott that's going around. We've had some people in our Discord discuss about this topic. On the G3 patrons Discord, we've had some people on YouTube bring this up in comments of different Bank of Exile videos. I just wanted to give some attention to this really quickly. So somebody has essentially said, this is what a boycott would look like for this trade system. And maybe if we all participate in it, then we can make GGG listen to us and fix trade. So here's what the auto-respond message is from this player. Auto-reply, due to market manipulation by bots and price fixers, I am boycotting the current trade system by setting every stash tab to 1 alteration buyout. Force GGG to implement a trade system that is more functional, less susceptible to nefarious forces, and are more enjoyable to use. Join the fight today. Okay. Some of you automatically are going to message me and say, oh, Iron, you shouldn't even be giving this guy any kind of attention because this sort of behavior shouldn't be rewarded in any way, shape, or form. Well, so be it. I guess I'm sensitive to that. I'm giving this guy attention because I do think this is something that's worthy to be responded to, but not maybe for the reasons that you might think. So those of you that are going to say, this is just dumb, why would you do this? I do think this is a symptom of people wanting to have their voices heard. Grinding Gear Games is known and praised regularly, not just by us right here in the G3 community, although we are some of the biggest fanboys of Grinding Gear Games out there. I mean, we play Path of Exile every day that we can, right? So we really, really like Path of Exile as a game. We like what Grinding Gear Games has done and is doing with the game. So, you can safely throw the fanboy name tag at us, and I guess that's a description of us, right? That we're fans of the game, we're fans of Grinding Gear and how they run things. That being said, this particular maneuver is the outcry of someone who wants to be heard by Grinding Gear Games and doesn't feel like they're being heard. We've done lots of different discussions, one of them being the auction house, on trade and on the reality that Grinding Gear Games is very aware of a lot of the problems that surround trade. And those problems are actually in line with the design philosophy of the folks making decisions at Grinding Gear Games, not just Chris Wilson, but Chris Wilson being the face of many of the decisions that get made at Grinding Gear Games. Trade is a pain in the ass, for lack of a better term, because they want it to be, right? Trade in any of its smoothness that is smooth right now is smooth because people have figured out a way to make it smooth, not because Grinding Gear Games wants it to be smooth. So, for those of you who are saying, oh, this is a dumb response, I will agree with you to some extent because this is dumb to say that I'm just going to price everything at the same price. One, it's dumb because what it's actually doing is it's actually falling into and jumping into the philosophy that Grinding Gear Games has for trade, rather than the philosophy of this actual player who is putting up this message, which the design philosophy of this player who's putting up this message is, hey, would we please fix trade and make it easier? But what's actually in reality is going to happen is this player is actually going to contribute to the reality that it's now tougher to trade. All of this guy's items, currencies, etc. is now listed at one alteration. So those of us who are genuinely still playing the game, still trying to make trades, are going to see all of these items that this guy's listing at one alteration and go, this guy's not genuine. He's not actually pricing at this. This is a waste of time to look at all this stuff. So this is actually sort of, biting the hand that feeds you, where it's counterproductive to its own causes, right? This isn't helping making trade any better. And by forcing GGG, by attempting to force GGG to do something because you're going to contribute to this terrible environment of everybody mispricing things and not responding to trades, that doesn't actually force GGG to do anything. It doesn't force more of an outcry. People have been crying out for years that trade needs to be fixed and improved. And GGG has responded. This isn't something that GGG has said, oh, we're just not going to respond to this and we're silent on it. This isn't a cry of gamers who are saying, oh, we just wish the design team and the devs would respond to us and would finally give us a reason for why things are the way they are. There are so many of you out there who are new to Path of Exile, and so you don't recognize that this is a topic and this is an ecosystem of trade that is exactly the way how Grinding Gear Games wants it to be. And as it continually gets easier and easier to make trades, that is actually counterproductive to Grinding Gear Games' goals for making trade hard. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's the reality of it. Anytime trade becomes more and more of a pain in the butt to do, Grinding Gear Games looks at that and gives it a thumbs up. Because from their perspective, their answer, at least so far from what they've given from their trade manifesto and from the various discussions and podcasts that Chris Wilson has been a part of, they have said that as trade gets easier, player retention goes down because players upgrade their characters quicker to take on content that then becomes easier, and then they stop playing the game quicker. Okay, so it hurts player retention numbers. I feel like that's a separate discussion unto itself. If you want to say that that's an ethical issue, if you want to say that having a frustrating trade system is something that's lame or that's dumb, or that it, as a philosophical approach for game UI, that's a poor choice. I think that's a separate discussion unto itself. I simply want to focus in on this boycott issue, to say that if you want to participate in this, fantastic, go for it. I don't think anybody should tell you how to play and how to interact with the game. If you're having fun doing this, then great, go have fun and do this. That being said, just recognize that this is actually counterproductive for the actual message of what this player says they're trying to accomplish, which is essentially applying pressure to GGG so that way they'll change trade. If GGG ever changes trade in the future, it's just going to be to systematically make it harder to trade. That's what they've said. They've said trade is already too easy now, and the reason why it's too easy is because third-party indexers figured out how to use the tools that GGG made available to allow for forum listings of items to go available, and people created indexes. And so then GGG was forced to eventually make the Path of Exile official trade website in order to compete with third-party websites. So that way they actually had an indexing website that would essentially be trustworthy and wouldn't be, outside seen. Now, for those of you that are going to say, oh, well, that's an example of players putting pressure on GGG and GGG had to conform. Yes, but we're at the stage that we're at today with the API not being responsive, and by many of us getting messages from 48, 72 hours ago for listings that have been gone and sold for literally days because of this problem. I don't think GGG is sitting there and saying, oh no, the players really want trade to change, and so we're finally going to crack on this. Those of you that are saying this is hurting Path of Exile as a game, and this is hurting player numbers, and this is hurting player retention, that simply isn't true. It simply isn't true. Those of you who are saying, well, trade is killing the game and more players are leaving Path of Exile every single league sooner and sooner because of trade, that simply isn't true. One of the reasons why the trade API is responding so slowly as it is because there are more players than ever playing Path of Exile for longer. This is essentially a problem with the popularity of Path of Exile growing, and with the number of players who are now playing at peak times and even at non-peak times that are higher than ever before. So for those of you who are going to say, yeah, well, this is hurting Path of Exile and it's giving Path of Exile a bad name. Yeah, well, everybody said that about synthesis. Everybody says that every single league about trade, and every single league with the release of a new league, more and more people want to get in on the best action RPG out there available, whether it's on Xbox, whether it's on PlayStation, or whether it's on PC, and that is Path of Exile. So Path of Exile continues to grow despite all of these problems. So I just wanted to have that as a quick aside. Yes, there are people who are out there who are saying, let's apply some pressure to GGG. I just think it's biting the hand that feeds you. It's not going to do anything. And if anything, it's actually helping GGG make trade harder. So anyway, feel free to leave a comment and disagree with me down below. Okay, this right here is a really informative post that I wanted to share as just a discussion point from somebody who actually provides third-party tool access for many of us who use trade. So the POEapp is a wonderful app. It's a wonderful indexing service that allows you to trade for items, particularly in bulk. It's a great service. Highly recommend you check them out. That being said, this is from the designer of the POEapp. Okay, this post is. So the post says, trading from the perspective of a trade site indexer, POEapp.com. I have seen a lot of misinformation being posted lately and wanted to share my perspective backed up with some data. On our end, we are capable of indexing quite a lot of items. In my graph below, you can see that we're cranking through quite a few items every single minute. In fact, I have quite a bit of headroom to handle even more. Unfortunately for us, the Trade API has a serious bottleneck as we enter peak hours each day. This is actually represented in my graph below. The peak in that graph represents player off hours. Yes, you read that correctly. There are fewer items being pushed through GGG's Trade API when the majority of the player base is active each day. Because of this, the indexers receive stale data, which could be minutes or even hours delayed. The problem is not that trade sites are over capacity, it's that the data feed that we are consuming does not have enough throughput. I hope this helps everyone understand the problem a little bit better. Okay, so essentially there is a bottleneck. You can see this on the graph as it is represented here, with 600K being about the baseline for what normality is for the amount of information that's coming through on this trade index. And you can see during the time that is the highest peak hours, that is when essentially less items actually get through on the trade index. Way less items get through. And what POEapp is actually saying is this is when most players are online. GGG's bottlenecking the API. There's lots of reasons for why they could do this. I'm not going to get into all the technicals because, frankly, I don't have the expertise to get into all the technicals of this. There are some people in this particular thread that discuss some of the technicals here below. There's tons of comments. I want to say there's over 200 comments. Yeah, there's 208 comments on this particular thread. So there's lots of technical jargon that's going on and lots of theories that are going on in this post. So I would encourage you to read it if you want to get into some of the technicalities of it. I will just quote a couple of quotes down here. So a question. What improvements could GGG make? In other words, if GGG is bottlenecking the API, hey, what could they do to actually fix this problem? So POEapp responds, we don't really have insights into their system, so anything that I say here is from an outsider's perspective. However, one of the big issues that we do see is that entire stashes are published to the river for each minor change. In other words, you remove or change the position and add one new item to a public stash tab, price or unprice an item, you hit it with a currency, etc. Each time this is done, all of the items in that particular stash tab are then published again to the river instead of just the changes. While this was fine several years ago, while there weren't many items being listed and therefore before big quad stash tabs, it's obvious that this approach does not scale well for today's needs. Okay, so if that's true, if that example is true, which again, he prefaces this, POEapp prefaces this by saying, hey, we don't have insider knowledge on this, but our best guess is that since everything updates in the entire stash tab every time it updates, essentially if you've got a bunch of items listed in a tab and you relist it, that's more information that's getting pushed through. So if you don't push through new information, or you do push through new information during a bottlenecked period, that information might not actually get listed. It might actually have gotten listed from a couple of days ago when you last updated it. So, all right, so there's lots of different theories out there. I'm not going to sit here and go through all of this, but that's just at least one response to a very excellent question. Hey, what could GGG do? There's a lot of things that are going on right now with trade. Trade is something that I feel very, very passionate about because I am a part of trade. Like I play Bank of Exile just as much as I play Path of Exile, especially recently with all of our different guild hedge funds and different things that we've been trying during Legion League that have been fun, that have been really, really fun and enjoyable to do. I am still enjoying Bank of Exile, and I still enjoy trading in Path of Exile. Believe it or not, hi, I am a person and I enjoy trade in Path of Exile. I don't enjoy all of the frustrating aspects. I don't enjoy getting PMs for stuff that's been sold days ago. I don't enjoy PMing people by accident for stuff that was listed days ago. I don't enjoy the reality that we're all having to adjust our trade habits and that we're having to adjust our behaviors that maybe have been built in over years of playing Path of Exile. That being said, I do think Grinding Gear Games is an amazing company. I do think Path of Exile is an amazing game. I think playing the essentially mini real-world economy in Path of Exile is one of the most intriguing and fun parts of Path of Exile for me as a player. I'm not going to stop playing Path of Exile anytime soon. I've seen some people say, oh, we should stop playing Path of Exile and really hurt the player numbers. I'm not going to stop because I still enjoy it. That being said, there's a lot of people out there that have different experiences and different levels of enjoyment with trade in Path of Exile. So I would love to hear your perspective. That's just my own perspective personally. I love it, and I'm still going to keep playing it. Yes, there are frustrations, but I'm going to deal with those frustrations and still bite the bullet and still keep playing. I'm just trying to be as authentic and as honest with you as I can be. Yes, there are things that are frustrating, but I'm going to keep playing because I love this game and I love flipping and I love making currency and I love seeing numbers go up. I love collaborating together with guildmates and seeing those numbers go up for other guildmates as well as for friends as well who I do trades for. So I really enjoy that. I enjoy all of the economic styles of Path of Exile, and I enjoy seeing problems like this get solved. And GGG has a track record of solving problems. Whether or not those problems take years to solve, whether that's like the old master system, that it takes years for that old master system to get rehauled, whether or not that's providing ingenious new league mechanics like Delve, like Incursion, like Synthesis, like Legion, whether that's coming up with new characters and new passives and new balances. I think GGG has a history of doing things really well when there are issues. I think right now trade is an issue, and I think GGG's history tells us that they're not going to touch it. So again, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Feel free to correct me if you've got information that says, hey, GGG has got trade coming down the line. One of the things that I think may eventually happen is GGG may release for us a trade league where they implement some different trade features. The problem right there, and I've seen many of you bring this up in various discussions, the problem right there with bringing into a trade league would be that any quality of life that gets introduced to a trade league, if that becomes the new norm and all of a sudden everybody loves it, if GGG decides that it actually hurts player retention numbers and they need to get rid of it, that could actually introduce a massive backlash against GGG, the likes of which we've never seen before, and that would actually really hurt player retention numbers. So there's a lot of factors going on. Trade is complicated. That being said, that's the discussion, and that's the place where we are at right now with trade. So if you've got feedback, if you've got comments, if you've got ideas, I'd love to interact with them and read them down below in the comment section. And I hope that today is the day a Mirror of Calandra drops for you in Path of Exile Legion League. I'm going to go back to trading because I love trading. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.